Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Welcome to this episode. I'm your host, Nikki Lowe, executive and leadership coach and founder of Wisdom for Working Mums. And today, I'm reflecting on my life lessons from 2023. If you're listening to this episode when it goes live, we did it. We made it to the end of another year. And even if you're not listening when this episode goes live at the end of December 2023, know that what I share will be useful to reflect on any time. I started doing these end of year reflection episodes a couple of years ago, I think during the pandemic. And to begin with, I wasn't sure if this subject was going to be a bit self-indulgent, but I always receive so many messages about my end of year reflections that it's kind of become a tradition. And actually, it's really lovely to be able to reflect back on my lessons across the years. And I talk about it being that we're really going mining for the gold of the year before saying goodbye to it. And it's actually something that I've become really kind of enamored with and really look forward to doing. And I find this practice really powerful because I'm a very future-orientated person. So it doesn't actually come naturally to me to reflect on the past. But that means it would be really easy for me to rush into 2024 and not look back. And if I do that, I'm going to miss out all the lessons that this year has taught me. And if I'm honest, I probably make some of the same mistakes. So, as I say, at my core, I'm all about development of myself and others. And the premise of this is, how can we develop wisely if we don't take the time to reflect? And I think there are some deeply profound and important lessons that I want to take away from this year. And my guess is it's the same for you too. And if I walked away without reflecting on them, I'd lose the goodness in those lessons. And I didn't want to do that. And I don't want that for you either. So in this episode, I'm going to reflect on what my lessons have been. And I hope they help you to reflect on what your lessons have been too. So we can kind of carry what we need to into the new year and leave behind what we need to as well. So in this episode, I'm going to share my 4 life lessons from this year. So lesson 1 is all about belonging to myself. And this year, I've really felt like I've been leaning into that life lesson of belonging to myself. I covered this in episode 121, all about fueling your well-being from the inside. So do go back and check out that episode because I go into a lot more detail there. But in summary, what do I mean by belonging to myself? Well, I think, like so many other women, I've spent a large part of my life people-pleasing, putting others' needs before my own. And if anything, actually, it was something that I regarded as a superpower for so long. I'm a Gemini astrologically, and it's called the chameleon of the zodiac, as Geminis can adapt to different groups of people with ease. And it's something actually I used to pride myself on being able to do, being in tune with other people's perspectives and needs and kind of adapting to meet those. But this year, I really felt that I needed to unlearn and unpick some of those behaviours, because what I realised was that I can be so in tune with other people's perspectives and needs, I lose myself in the process. And belonging to yourself is about that self-awareness and acknowledging and honouring your own values and needs. It's about finding like that deep connection within your inner self. It's about understanding your strengths and your limitations and kind of embracing your uniqueness without guilt or comparison. It sounds good, doesn't it? But what I've realised is, oh my God, how difficult this is. Because as humans, we're hardwired to want to belong, and it's easier to shut down our own needs to fit in than it is to show up as our true selves and risk that, I suppose, uncertainty of criticism or rejection. And I had a really painful but powerful experience with a friend at the end of last year that I've spent most of this year unpicking and exploring with my therapist. And it's just worth saying, as a coach, it's so important for me to explore my own inner world so I can help my clients do the same. And I'm lucky to be able to invest in a coach, a supervisor, and a therapist. And it might sound a lot, but my word, I absolutely love the time I get to focus on my own psychological mindedness and the kind of insights and power that's given me. So a big realization in my therapy this year was how much I'd lost touch with my own experience and needs by focusing so much on other people's. And in this situation with my friend, I was deeply hurt by a situation, but wasn't allowing myself to connect to it because I was so focused on their experience, and I could understand their reaction to the situation. But there was something sitting underneath that kind of my own experience that I couldn't shake off. And in therapy, I started to dig into it, and it opened up a whole new experience that I just pushed to one side. And when I started to lean into my own experience, my own needs, it was mind-blowing. And I realised that there were all these emotions and needs that I'd unconsciously just pushed to one side. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. But it meant I had to address it. And I can honestly say it has been one of the most powerful but painful experiences. It meant having some very honest and challenging conversations. And it meant me actually deciding to end the friendship. And can I just say, in our culture, we talk a lot about ending romantic relationships, but not as much as really talked about ending friendships. And the grief that came through that process was real, let me tell you. And at times I was really doubting myself on ending the friendship, but I kept coming back to belonging to myself first, honouring my own experience and perspective, and tolerating the discomfort and sometimes the real pain of not keeping quiet to keep the peace and keep the friendship. The levels of unlearning and unpicking I had to go through to reach that point have been hard, really, really hard, but powerful. And I think there is something about this time of life too. I'm coming up to 47 and I feel like I'm really being immersed in perimenopause. And as the brilliant Brené Brown says, midlife is not a crisis. Midlife is an unraveling. Midlife is when the universe gently places her hands upon your shoulders, pulls you close, and whispers in your ear, I'm not screwing around. All of this pretending and performing, these coping mechanisms that you've developed to protect yourself from feeling inadequate and getting hurt, has to go. Your armour is preventing you from growing into your gifts. I understand that you needed these protections when you were small. I understand that you believed your armour could help you secure all the things you needed to feel worthy and lovable. But you're still searching, and you're more lost than ever. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you. You can't live the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through you. They were made to live and love with your whole heart. It's time to show up and be seen. Love that quote. And as painful and as hard as it has been at times this year, it feels like it's been one of the most empowering things I've done. Giving myself permission to belong to myself first, to listen to my own needs, to even just recognise they're there, to not gaslight myself and my experiences, to want to fit in and be liked. I can't tell you how hard that has been. It sounds really easy, but oh my God. But actually, the more I do it, the more powerful it feels. It's tolerating the discomfort of disappointing others so I don't disappoint myself. And I realise that in the past, I've damaged my core value of integrity. Integrity is so important to me. And I hadn't realised all the places that I'd kind of hustled my integrity away to please other people. It's really become apparent to me this year where I would unconsciously, totally outside of my conscious awareness, sacrifice my integrity to make others feel more comfortable or want to be liked by them. And actually, it made me so sad and really angry as well that I would do this, how I would sabotage something so important to me to hustle for that innate need to be liked by others or not cause them any discomfort. And it's kind of sparked this fire in me that I found uncomfortable because I've had to strip back layers of learning, but really empowering. It's like I'm slowly letting go of the strategies the little girl in me would have used to navigate the world. And I'm embracing the queen within me, which leads me on to lesson 2. So lesson 2 is all about becoming the leader in my life and not just my work. So the queen archetype is something that I use with my clients. And as you might be aware of, the the philosophy of archetypes. We all have got these archetypes within us. They're almost like parts of ourselves that are sometimes expressed. And the Queen archetype is all about connecting to that graceful but grounded energy within us that says, this is my realm, and I lead with maturity and take responsibility. And it's that self-sovereignty, the ability to choose the direction of your life and be the exclusive authority over your own body and mind. And it's something that I've stepped into in my business over the last couple of years. And if you go back to episode 114, I share about how I've stepped up to be the CEO in my business, and I go behind the scenes with my business manager, Lauren. But this year, I also feel like I'm stepping more into the CEO role in my life too. And I think that self-sovereignty is helping me to see where I've been making decisions or taking action that's not connected to my inner leader. So if we go back to that Queen archetype, the Queen is comfortable with boundaries and is in command, but she's humble and graceful. The Queen is comfortable in leadership and almost like really certain of her place in the world. And she epitomizes grace and dignity. And the Queen is deeply committed to her realm and also holds that clear vision for what she desires for and from those in it. And she does it unapologetically. And I feel that's what I'm starting to do more in my personal life. My inner Queen is like my inner wise leader. When I have to make decisions or make choices, my inner leader tends to make the wisest choices. And I've really enjoyed stepping into that archetype in my mind. And what I've noticed is that I'm putting in better boundaries with myself and others. I'm not letting the tactical stuff get in the way of more strategic decisions and vision. And the more I do that, the more I actually like and respect myself. It's like my inner leader can step over all the unhelpful inner chatter, resistance, and just stuff that keeps me small. And it's interesting because I've worked in the area of leadership development for many years, but while I have tried to apply that in my work, I've not done it so much in my personal life. And I find that a little bit strange, but it's meaning that I'm starting to think about how I communicate more clearly and effectively, saying no to stuff more, making decisions more aligned with my values, building a team around me personally. And let me give you a small and what can seem like a really insignificant example of where I'm doing this, because hopefully it starts to bring alive this as how does it show up in my life? And the example is from one of my friendships groups. I'm on a WhatsApp group with an old friend I've known for about 30 years. And during the pandemic, he was very vocal about conspiracy theories and his views on the government and vaccinations. And he had a number of people in this group from our friendship group over the years, many of whom I don't actually see very often now at all. But over the last couple of years, his messages have become more controversial. And at times I've just found the tone of the email like condescending and, passive aggressive, disrespectful. And I've just ignored them, just saying, oh, that's just them. As this person is often jokingly and fondly known as being a bit like this. But I gotta say, this year something's shifted in me. And as I've stepped into being the leader in my life, I've noticed that when I tried to brush off these messages as, that's just them being them, my inner leader kind of spoke back to me and said, but is it okay? And my inner leader's answer is, no, these messages and the tone aren't okay. There's still part of me that thinks just ignore them, they're harmless and you'll gain nothing from pushing back. But my inner leader has said, no, it's not okay. So I just messaged him back with a graceful but a firm message, recognising his passion on the subject, but respectfully asking him not to use that tone with me or to just remove me from the circulation list. And actually his response to that message actually wasn't important. What was important to me was that I kind of respectfully held my boundary. It's almost like I was protecting my realm. my time, my attention, because, I read these messages and think, it just drains my energy. And it was all about kind of holding true to my values. And I think that's what happens for me when you step up and become a true leader in your life. You start looking at all the decisions and choices you're making and pass them through that filter of your values and your vision. And it's not as straightforward as that. Don't get me wrong. I had that inner chatter that thought, well, people think I'm being a bitch. It's interesting, that one, isn't it? Because I don't think men ever have that thought. Am I being too serious about this? Am I making there an issue when there isn't an issue? But each of those responses didn't actually come from a place of leadership. And I feel like I'm doing this more and more, and I've still got a huge way to go with this, like a long way. And I'm only just getting started. But as I'm doing this, I actually feel like I'm respecting myself more. And I'm actually more connected to my dad, who passed away a few years ago. He was a man that I think was a real leader in his life. He had a lot of self-sovereignty. He was comfortable with making decisions that reflected his needs and values, and did it without attachment to how other people would feel. So I feel like I'm picking up the baton from him in that sense. And as I step more into my queen archetype, I know that there are going to be days when my crown slips, and it's going to be reminding myself to straighten up my crown and step back into my personal leadership. And my third lesson from this year is all about energy IQ. If you've been following me for a while now, you'll know kind of how important energy is to me. One of my first ever episodes of the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, I think it was episode 8, I explored managing your energy as a working mum. Because after my burnout experience, energy has kind of become the source of currency with which I measure my life, because that experience taught me that without energy, I've got an actual poor quality of life. Even if I've got great things in my life, I couldn't experience them and enjoy them. So I've learned to respect my energy resources and not take them for granted. And over the last decade, I've learned about the different sources of energy, so like physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and what I need to do in each domain to have the quality of life that I want. But I think there's something really profound about this time of my life, the perimenopause, because with it, I'm noticing a new element of fatigue kick in. And for someone who's experienced adrenal fatigue, it's no longer called that. It's called HPA axis dysfunction. But where one of the main symptoms was fatigue, this isn't a good feeling, let me tell you. But the gift that it's given me is a new level of energy awareness, what is termed energy IQ, which is all about how you build, sustain, and harness your energy to have the impact you want in your life. So I'm not just thinking about what I'm eating to fuel my energy, how much sleep and the quality of sleep and all those things that kind of we would think about. But I'm also thinking about what are the things and situations and people that fuel and feed me, and what are the things that deplete and dull me. And interestingly, me and my team have actually implemented tracking our menstrual cycle, so we know where each of us is in our cycle, because it helps us understand where our energy might be in any given time of the month. And it's helped us to reflect back to each other if we're in high or low energy, where we are in our cycle. Because I might be having a day where I'm really struggling to focus properly, and I'll just put a message in our chat to say, I'm having one of those days, and it'll just take Lauren or Laura to go, but yeah, look where you are in your cycle. And it's almost like you have more grace and compassion for yourself. And this year, I've really tried to build my interoceptive awareness, that internal intelligence about what my body is telling me. It's still work in progress. It's all too easy for me to get caught up in my head and override my body, which has been, I think, a continued lesson for me. If I get absorbed in my work, I can override the sensation that I need the toilet, or I need a break. Or not taking the rest breaks that I need. But I know the more I can build my energy IQ, not only will I feel better from a well-being perspective, but also the intelligence that comes from knowing my body, that kind of intuition, that mind-body intelligence, because we perceive situation with the collective wisdom of all of our senses. It's like our sixth sense. So this year, as hard as it's been to feel that element of fatigue again, it's kind of opened up a gateway to take my energy IQ to another level. I'm almost becoming my chief energy officer. And with that, it leads me on to my fourth and final lesson from this year, which is about responsibility. I've always been someone with a high sense of responsibility. I'm naturally very conscientious, kind of wanting to do the right thing. And I remember one of my aunts singing to me when I was about 10 years old, Nicola, Nicola, ever so particular. And I think that was all about her recognising my need to want to get things right and do the right thing. And I always thought responsibility was about doing the right thing. And that was good. But this year I've kind of had a mindset shift on it. Instead of being responsible, I want to be response-able. I want the ability to choose my response, because I think that is really the most responsible thing I could do. And being response-able is the ability to be mindful of ourselves, of the thoughts, the feelings that we kind of experience as a result of both internal and external stuff. It involves that grounded centeredness and the ability to consciously and I suppose deliberately choose our responses with intention. Whereas before, I think my over responsibility could leave me feeling exhausted and depleted. And actually in those times, I would just react and not respond to situations. And I think one of the biggest side effects I'm finding in my perimenopause is irritability. I'm finding that I'm less and less able to respond and I'm more likely to react. I think my nervous system has become more dysregulated with my hormone changes. And given my experience of adrenal fatigue, where my nervous system really got out of whack, this is something I really want to be able to address going into the new year. So I'm getting really curious about what it takes to be responsible, so able to respond at this season of my life. And I want to avoid that allostatic overload. That's kind of like the physiological response or consequences to the exposure to stress. The technical term for allostatic overload is the physiological consequence of chronic exposure to fluctuating or heightened neural or neuroendocrine response, which results from repeated or prolonged chronic stress. Now, that might sound hugely technical and I'll break it down, but I think effectively that's what led to my adrenal fatigue. And that is something I really have to pay attention to in my own life, trying to be a working mum that is ambitious, that has drive, that wants to drive my work forward, but also wants to achieve great things in my personal life too. And as we know, the combining of those two can create huge amounts of demand on our time and energy. And I'm like, if I can't nail this, I don't feel that I can navigate my life in the way that I want to with ease and with well-being. And that allostatic overload is a term that a neuroendocrinologist, Bruce McEwen, and a psychologist, Elliot Steller, created. And they were looking at studying the neuroendocrine system. So basically how the nervous system and the endocrine system interact and communicate with each other. So it's really how hormones impact our body and all of its vital organs. And what they saw was changes in that allostatic load create an adjustment. So our nervous system has to adjust to actually maximize our short-term survival by kind of our stress response. But if it's prolonged, has a cost to later health. And so our bodies are really clever at adapting to stress, which is great in the short term. But over the long term, if it's not addressed, it has serious and significant impact. And I think motherhood is a time when our allostatic load is at its highest. You know, we're juggling so much, often without enough resources. So the impact on our physiology is high. And that's what I've come to learn over the past decade about my own health journey. But now, with the added nuances of perimenopause, my focus on this has gone to kind of like a whole new level. How can I be the most response-able version of myself, to choose my response in any given situation, to find my centre in the whirlwind of working mum life? I want to be the most responsible mother I can be. I want to be a mother that can choose her response and be integrity with my values when I do that. So I'm giving myself a gift this Christmas. I've brought myself a Christmas present, which is a DNA test. Weird, I know, but this DNA test is all about genomics, and it's my way to discover more about how I can support my nervous system, because really for the last 37 years, I've struggled with my hormones. I started to have significant symptoms when I was about 11, when I started my periods. And those symptoms, they weren't identified at the time, but were actually polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it's where your hormones get out of whack. And I was given long-term antibiotics and actually a really strong dose of the contraceptive pill at a really young age to deal with it. And I suppose it masked the problem. It kind of dealt with the symptoms, but actually caused multiple knock-on effects. But I've also actually got estrogen dominance, so my hormones are very interesting and make some very interesting symptoms. And I've had to learn how to manage those. Plus, my mum and grandmother both died of a hormone-induced breast cancer. So I am very keen to make sure I manage my hormones quite carefully. And so for perimenopause, HRT is not a really simple solution for me, but I'm not sure it is for anybody. But my hormonal issues mean that it's more complex. So I'm doing a DNA test, and this will give me more information on how my genes interact with each other and my behaviour and my environment. So looking how they impact my health. And it's the study of epigenetics. And I don't know if you've come across this term, but basically it says that our genes load the gun in terms of what our health is predetermined, but actually it's our environment that fire the trigger. So the results of these tests will focus exclusively on my nervous system and my hormones, but it will analyse my gene variants, so things like serotonin, melatonin, dopamine, all of the kind of different nervous system endocrine system, to be able to see how they interact. And that report will give me some really detailed recommendations on how I can support myself to kind of alleviate any potential symptoms and to optimize my health, which I'm hoping is going to be really, really powerful, because going into 2024, I want my focus to be on my nervous system regulation. You know, what are the things that can help me feel calm and grounded? And the insights from my DNA test will really help with this, because I know that my superpower is firing at my adrenal system. I can get shizzle done. You know, I can tap into my willpower, but at what cost? And I want go into 2024 with a really regulated nervous system, because a dysregulated nervous system happens when there's an imbalance between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So kind of the rest and digest and the fight and flight. And I'm in my sympathetic nervous system response more than I'd like to be. So I'm in fight and flight more than I'd like to be. You know, I can often feel like I'm racing against the clock. I can set myself up for feeling stressed by being over optimistic about what I can get done in a day. You know, just the day-to-day racing to get everybody out of the house in the morning and racing to finish my work before I have to collect the children. And it's no wonder that our nervous systems can become dysregulated. And when our nervous system is out of balance, we can't manage our stress effectively. It impacts our ability to make decisions and maintain healthy relationships. So the quote that the true measure of success is a calm nervous system is what I'm taking into this year. That's how I want to measure my success for 2024, a kind of calm and regulated nervous system. Because when we have a calm nervous system, we have the freedom and choice to choose our response. You know, we become response able. And that's what I want to create for myself. And if people are interested, I will share that journey with you. I'm more than happy, because I know that not everybody's in a position where they can kind of pay to have DNA tests and the private kind of support that goes around analysing that and supporting myself. And I want to make sure that these insights are accessible for everybody. So if it is interesting to you, drop me a note and I'll look at doing a future episode on it. But it may not be of interest to you, so don't worry if it's not. So those are my 4 lessons from 2023. And I've also got into a bit of a ritual of creating a mantra for the new year. And I've been reflecting on what I want the mantra to be for 2024. because each year I try to create something that will help guide me. The last 2 years, actually, 2021, it was Let It Be Easy. And then this year's was Let It Be Easy and Light. And actually this year, the theme is still on light. And I love Michelle Obama. I love listening and watching her. I just think she's somebody that is so in her own personal leadership. It's inspiring. She really embodies that queen archetype beautifully. And I recently watched an interview Oprah did with her for her book, The Light We Carry. And I loved it. Her book is actually on my Christmas list. I've not actually read the book yet. But in it, she talks about when we're able to recognize our own lights, we kind of become empowered to use it, and how difficult it can be to remember and stay true to our light. And our light is really our spirit, our internal flame, our soul, our kind of uniqueness, and our zone of genius. But when our light is shining bright, we want people around us who love that light and reflect it back to us in all its brilliance. And we want to be able to do the same for other people around us. And we want people who will also protect our light. And we want to avoid what Brené Brown calls the candle blower outers, people or situations that want to blow out our light as they feel insecure around it. So this year, I want to take that forward as a mantra, because I'm all about helping people connect with their light, cherish it and protect it. And also mine included. It's about that energy IQ. That light has all of our energy in it. So I haven't actually quite worked out the mantra, but it's going to be something like, watch over your shine, in every moment be thine. Or shield your glow, let its warmth freely flow. Or maybe guard your glow, let it steadily grow. And I've got a ChatGPT to thank for this, because when I was trying to come up with a mantra for this podcast, I wasn't in brainstorming mode. Maybe it's, I shine and protect, a dual embrace, my inner flame, a source of grace. So I'll let you know as I kind of nail that a bit more. But those have been my lessons for 2023. And I'm really curious and almost excited to experiment with them going into the new year. I hope you found those insights into my life lessons useful. And I really hope that as you've listened to them, they've sparked ideas on what your life lessons have been and how you can take the goodness from those into the new year. And I just want to say a massive thank you for being a listener to this podcast, because one of my greatest joys is doing this podcast. And I've really enjoyed doing it this year, and the guests that I've had on and the insights that we've shared. And I really appreciate you being part of kind of my support squad, the pod squad. So thanks ever so much for hanging out with me in this episode. Could you do me a huge favour, please, before we finish listening? Can you share this episode with 2 or 3 working mums that might pop into your head as you listen? As you know, my mission is to support as many working mums on their journey as possible. So I'd be really grateful if you could support them by offering this free podcast. I hope it's been useful for you. And if it has, can you pass it on to another working mum, please? Thanks ever so much for tuning in. And I hope 2024 is a year of health and fulfillment for you and the people you care most about. Until next time, take care. If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.